She was involved in dating an archaeological site in Mexico called Huayatlaco, which is near the town of Puebla in central Mexico. There, some American archaeologists discovered these artifacts and others like them. And they may look primitive to us, but according to archaeologists, artifacts of this type are made only by anatomically modern humans, not by any kind of ape man. The excavation was conducted by archaeologist Cynthia Irwin Williams. She conducted a very professional excavation up to all the modern standards. The artifacts were photographed in place when they were discovered, such as this one here. And here is a close-up of it, solidly embedded in the rock, indicating it was an original part of those deposits. Now, of course, the archaeologists want to know how old these implements were. So they called in a team of geologists to date the site, and in that team was Virginia Steen McIntyre. So she and her colleagues used 4 different methods to date the site. In the same layer as the artifacts, animal bones with butchering marks were found. That's another indication of a human presence. So they used the uranium series method to date those bones, and they used 2 different uranium series methods, and the protactinium method gave an age of greater than 100,000 years. The thorium age was 245,000 years. Directly above the layer in which the animal bones and the human artifacts were found was a layer of volcanic ash. So the geologists used the zircon fission track method to date that layer of ash, and they got an age of 270,000 years, which means the animal bones and human artifacts below that layer had to be at least that old. They also used a method called tetrahydration. This is based on the fact that volcanic crystals over time gradually absorb water molecules, and the water molecules begin to fill up little vesicles or air bubbles in the crystals. And by measuring the amount of water that accumulates in the crystals, you can get some idea of the age of the ash. And the age they got using that method was consistent with the methods they got using the zircon fission track method and the uranium series method. And finally, they used standard stratigraphic evidence. The artifact layers were at about 10 meters deep in terms of the landscape there, and they could determine by studying the geology of the region that the site had originally been covered by another 50 meters of sediment. So they calculated how long, studying the hydrogeology of the area, how long it would have taken to erode, those 50 meters down to the present level. And again, that age was consistent with the ages obtained by the other methods. So, the geologist, Virginia Steen McIntyre, and her colleagues concluded that the age of the site was at least 250,000 years, and they considered that a very conservative estimate. The archaeologists absolutely refused to accept this date. They said, that's impossible. Human beings capable of making these artifacts did not exist anywhere in the world 250,000 years ago because they hadn't evolved yet. And what to speak of being present in North America, because the current consensus is that you have no human beings entering North America until 20,000 years ago maximum. And most, the current consensus is actually around 15,000 years. So they absolutely refused to publish the date for the site given by their own team of geologists that they themselves called in to date the site. Now when Virginia Steen McIntyre and some of her colleagues independently published the date for the site, she found herself in big trouble. A rumor campaign was started People were calling her a maverick, a publicity seeker, a troublemaker. She lost a teaching position that she held at a university in the United States because of this publication. And she also suddenly found that all of her opportunities for advancement in the United States Geological Survey were suddenly blocked off. So those are some of the pressures that can be applied to scientists who have the temerity to challenge, this current consensus. But what happened is that Virginia Steen McIntyre, she was so disgusted by the treatment she was given that she and her husband moved out to a little town in the Rocky Mountains in America, and she just remained silent for 10 years until I found out about her case and wrote about it in Forbidden Archaeology and started getting her work some of the attention I think it deserves. And partly because of that, some new research is now going on down at that Huayatlaco site. And the results that are coming in are tending to confirm the original date that Virginia Steen McIntyre and her colleagues got. For example, one of the world's leading experts on diatoms has gone down there and looked at the site. So diatoms are tiny little plants that, they're almost microscopic, but they leave little hard skeletons when they die. And there are hundreds of kinds of diatoms, each of them characteristic of a particular period in the Earth's geological history. So Van Landingham found that the type of diatoms found in the artifact-bearing layers at Huayatlaco are the type that lived in that period, 250,000 years ago. In the 1990s, a German archaeologist named Thieme found some very nicely made wooden spears at a site called Schöningen in Germany. His report was published in Nature. The interesting thing about these spears is they were shaped, they're about 6 feet long. They were shaped exactly like modern javelins, that they use in the Olympics, with a balance point about 1/3, from the tip. They were obviously a weapon made for throwing and hunting. Now, they were found in soft coal deposits 320,000 years old. So Thieme and his colleagues had to think, well, who made these? Who made these artifacts? They decided it could not have been human beings like us because human beings like us did not exist 320,000 years ago. So they thought it must have been some variety of Homo erectus living in Europe 300,000 years ago who made these artifacts. Now that was a little bit unusual because up to this point, archaeologists generally believe that the making and using of throwing weapons like this was something that only anatomically modern humans did. They'd never attributed this kind of behavior to Homo erectus. And as a matter of fact, the oldest throwing spears that they had up to this point were less than 100,000 years old, which meant they fit in their ideas about the origin of anatomically modern humans. So they thought, well, human beings like us didn't exist. Homo erectus must have made them. But I believe there's another solution to this problem. And it lies in northern France, where Jacques Boucher de Perthes, one of the famous early archaeologists, made an interesting discovery. At a site called Abbeville in northeastern France, he discovered this anatomically modern human jaw. He discovered it in this layer of his excavation, along with many artifacts of the human type, stone tools and weapons. Now, according to modern geologists, this layer at the Moulin-Quignon site at Abbeville is 320,000 years old. Even at the time that this bone, this